In the heart of northern England, in a small valley surrounded by rolling hills and fog that clung to the ground like an old secret, there lived a woman named Eleanor Wren. She was known among the villagers not just for her height, taller than most men, but for her quiet strength, the kind that spoke through her eyes rather than her words. Eleanor had once been the wife of Thomas Wren, a blacksmith who went to war in 1915 and never came back. His name was carved into the memorial stone by the church, along with dozens of others, but to Eleanor, it was just a cold engraving that could never capture his warmth. He had left her with 2 children, Samuel, who was 10 when his father left, and Clara, a baby who had never known the sound of her father's laugh. The valley had changed since the war. Many men were gone, and those who returned were not the same. Eleanor's cottage stood near the river, small and damp, but filled with the smell of bread, wool, and firewood. Every morning before dawn, she would wake, wrap her shawl tight, and begin her chores, milking the goat, chopping wood, and preparing porridge for her children. The villagers respected her, but from a distance. She was not one for gossip or laughter at the tavern. Her tall frame and deep eyes made some uneasy, as if she carried the ghosts of the past in her shadow. Samuel, now 15, had grown restless. The war had taken his father and left behind a hunger for purpose he couldn't name. He wanted to leave the valley, to find work in the city or maybe join the merchant ships. Clara, gentle and curious, spent her days collecting wildflowers and sketching them on scraps of paper. She was delicate, like a wild bird that could never be caged. Eleanor did everything for them. She worked in the fields during harvest, cleaned houses for the wealthier families in the nearby town, and mended clothes for pennies. Each night, she'd return home exhausted, her hands red and cracked, yet she would still find time to tell Clara stories before bed, stories of bravery, love, and loss, though she never admitted how much of herself was hidden inside them. One cold autumn evening, a letter arrived. It was from the Department of War Compensation, offering a small payment for Thomas Wren's service, money that came a decade too late. Eleanor held the letter in trembling hands, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. For years she had hoped for his return, and though she knew he was gone, seeing it written in official ink felt like losing him all over again. She folded the letter and placed it in a wooden box with his old photograph. Then, she sat by the window, watching her children sleep by the firelight, and whispered to herself, "Thomas, I kept them safe. I did what I promised. The winter that followed was the harshest in memory. Snow buried the valley, and food became scarce. Eleanor sold her wedding ring to buy flour and coal. Her once strong arms began to weaken, but she refused to let her children see it. Samuel tried to help, chopping wood for neighbors, earning coins, but there were days when he'd return empty-handed, face pale with shame. "Don't look at me like that, Sam," she said one evening as he stared into the empty bread bowl. "Pride won't fill our stomachs. We survive, that's what we do." But inside, she feared what hunger might do to them all. Clara fell ill in January. It began with a cough, then fever. The doctor from town came once, shook his head, and said it was the lung sickness, what people now called consumption. He prescribed rest and warmth, but warmth was a luxury they no longer had. Eleanor stayed awake for nights, keeping the fire burning, holding Clara's frail hand, singing the lullabies Thomas used to hum. Samuel watched helplessly, anger brewing in his chest, anger at the world, at the war, at the cold that seemed endless. One night, when the snowstorm howled outside and the roof leaked from the wind, Samuel broke down. Why did he have to go, Mother? Why did Father have to die for people who don't even remember his name? Eleanor looked at him, her eyes soft but tired. Because he believed in something better, Sam. And we must keep believing too. But her voice trembled. Deep down, even she wasn't sure what was left to believe in. By spring, Clara's cough had quieted. Her eyes were bright again, though her cheeks remained pale. Eleanor thought perhaps hope had returned. She began working again, taking laundry from the town. Life moved on, in its quiet, stubborn way. But storms come even when the sky seems clear. One morning, Samuel didn't return from work. A neighbor said he had gone to help load timber at the river dock. Hours passed, then days. When they finally found him, his body was pulled from the current, face pale and still, tangled in reeds. The river that Eleanor had always loved now became her enemy. The villagers buried Samuel beside his father's name on the memorial hill. Eleanor didn't cry at the funeral. She stood tall, like stone, holding Clara's hand. The wind whipped around her dress, but she didn't flinch. The priest's words faded into the distance, and when it was over, she whispered, "I have no more to give." Life after that became hollow. Clara grew weaker again, as if her brother's death had taken the last of her spirit. Eleanor's days were quiet, her nights endless. She stopped singing, stopped smiling. The fire in the cottage rarely burned anymore. One evening, a young pastor visited. He had kind eyes and spoke softly. "Mrs. Wren, the village worries for you. Perhaps you should come live nearer the church. You and Clara." But Eleanor interrupted. "This house is all I have left of him. If I leave it, I leave him." The pastor nodded, understanding what words could not reach. Winter came again, and with it, silence. Clara's health declined swiftly. Eleanor tried everything: herbal teas, warm compresses, whispered prayers, but death does not bargain. One cold dawn, as snowflakes drifted through the cracked window, Clara took her last breath in her mother's arms. Eleanor sat still for a long time. The fire had died hours ago, but she didn't feel the cold anymore. She looked at her daughter's face, peaceful, as if sleeping, and finally, her tears came. All the tears she had buried for 10 years, for Thomas, for Samuel, for Clara. They poured out, unstoppable, until her voice broke into a raw, hollow sound that filled the little cottage like a hymn of grief. That night, the villagers saw smoke rise from the chimney again. They thought maybe Eleanor had found her strength back. But in the morning, when they came to check, the door was open, the fire cold. Eleanor Wren was gone. No one ever found her body. Some said she walked into the river where her son had died. Others whispered she went into the hills to be with her family again. All they found was her shawl, caught on a tree branch near the riverbank. Years later, travelers passing through the valley would hear stories of the tall woman by the river, who appeared on foggy nights, holding the hands of 2 children. Some said she smiled, others said she wept. The valley itself remained quiet, but every spring, near the ruins of her cottage, wildflowers bloomed in strange abundance, bright yellow and blue, like the sketches Clara once made. And the villagers, when they saw them, would bow their heads and whisper, "She never left. She's still keeping them safe."